I wanted to commend you guys on the research that you did. My question was, what happened to these detention basins during the long dry seasons that they have in Cuba?
So the detention basins are allowed to empty, and that's actually another benefit, is that they don't have to be full all the time. So, and here's a really cool thing. In Norway, actually, they have a massive system of detention basins, and during the dry season, they empty and they're used as parks. So we can actually utilize these detention basins for multiple uses. Not only can they be used to mitigate the runoff and enhance water quality, but they can also be used during the dry season. They can be football fields or soccer fields or social areas. So there's another really great benefit of the detention basins.
Okay. Did you guys do any kind of cost analysis?
I'm really glad you asked, because we actually have some cost slides in our bullpen. So it's a little tough. There's this cool thing about the detention basins. Basically, the formula states that as the volume of the basin increases, so does the cost. So the costs range from approximately $40,000 to $110,000. And maintenance costs themselves are very low. And for our purposes, we can assume that because we do not have the entirety of the data that we require, we cannot make a full-blown cost analysis, but we can make a very basic one. So So using a 2-acre detention basin as our standard detention basin, and let's say we use that in each subcatchment. We have 21 subcatchments, 2 acres, and we're going to say that the maximum cost, of a 1-acre detention basin is approximately $100,000. If we have 2 acres, 21 basins, and $100,000, that would be $4.2 million. So we can say that this will approximate to a cost of approximately $4.2 million. And then comparing that to the flood damage in Cuba with no estimated protections according to the World Research Institute Global Flood Analyzer, that's compared to $122.6 million. So we can see that it's very beneficial to utilize these basins and spend the money now so that we can reap the benefits in the future and not have to spend $122 million.
Congratulations, guys. Well done. Very well delivered. I think, as Rafael mentioned, I read your presentation and I read your purpose or your objective, and it didn't dawn on me till this presentation right now as you're talking about that really what you're selling me is a detention basin, and you're telling me that the way we're going to analyze and justify it is using the swim model. The entire written proposal was all the analysis. The presentation was about the analysis and the basis for the analysis, which is absolutely excellent. But you're selling me on something. So I would recommend, when you guys look at this and when you come back, sell me on the detention basins. This should have been in forefront. Tell me what you're proposing and then develop it, because your analysis was absolutely outstanding. It's something I would pay for in the private sector. Okay? So congratulations, and very well delivered, by the way. Excellent presentation. No questions, because there's nothing.
Yeah,
You guys answered it all.
you guys answered. I'm afraid to ask. Another slide will come up, but well done, guys. Very good delivery, and you know your stuff, and you're well rehearsed. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Just wondering if by doing this research you made any analysis what is the minimum flood elevation in the buildings in Havana. And I know it may be different in different locations, but if you ever look at that or not.
That's funny, because we actually almost had a slide for that. Measuring the actual flood heights requires a different simulation. SWIM 5 deals solely with runoff for the most part. And so if we wanted to simulate flooding, we would have to use a system such as HEC-RAS. And so with that, we would also need to know things such as the geometry of the river, which at the moment, that's just data we don't have. We would have to acquire that. That's actually on the board for next year. So, but to answer your question, no, we were not able to estimate flood height. That's just a completely separate analysis.
Any coincidence with the pink ties, or it's just simply...
You haven't been paying attention.
That's right. Yeah, the last 3 years. The same tie. I believe it's the same ties I've been wearing every year. Okay.
That's a you out there.
only have one question because I think have been excellent. In case of normal rainfall or standard rainfall or average rainfall, it's okay. I like it, and I think that this will solve the problem. But what about in case of a big hurricane, or when the amount of water will increase twofolds or threefolds? It will be, an alternative that has to be estimated. I mean, which will be, the best, alternative that we'll have in case of that, because that's according to averages, that's according to what has happened in the past. But we have to be prepared for anything that have not happened.
Great, thank you. So that's a little tough as well, because hurricanes, we can say, are also getting stronger. So if we want to prepare for a hurricane, we would also have to prepare for a significantly stronger storm, which would result in a larger size of basins. And if we want to do that, we could actually follow the same exact methodology. We could take a very strong storm, such as Andrew. We could put it within SWIM 5. We can put it in through the climate adjustment tool. And then we can run our model. We can see, all right, what's the standard runoff going to be due to the hurricane pre-climate change? What would it be post-climate change, or approximately 100 years later? We can see that, and then we can develop the basins accordingly. So it's 100% possible to do, and for our analysis, that was not the focus.
Thank you, judges. We have a couple of minutes for some audience questions. We have one back there. Do you want to come up front? I have to give you, hold on a second. Let me give you the microphone.
Stays over the area for, let's say, 48 hours, dumping a lot of water. And the basins get saturated with water. What happens? What is the contingency to prevent this now from overflowing?
So the basins are controlled. You can actually control how much water exits the basins. So if we need to, if the basins are at risk of flooding, we can actually empty the basins, and then they will flow through the subcatchment, through their associated pipes and systems into the river. And hopefully we will be able to release that water into the ocean. That would be the ideal.
But if the ocean is pushing back? Because there's a big surf, and it's pushing the water in.
So, you want to try this?
Thank you. So in this particular case, in order to consider the storm surge from the ocean, we would have to use another model, and we did not consider that extensively in this study, but it can be done.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. Very good job.
Any other questions? Pete?
This was very educational because you took a very scientific approach to a very political theme. Right now, politicians have just confused the heck out of the population in terms of what is going on. So you took some very, very real data. I mean, this is to the point in this country that we challenge climate change, but we trust a gopher for the weather prediction, the groundhog. Right, so we trust more the groundhog than we do. So what was very, very important is that you took a very analytical and scientific approach with real life data and produced a very strong sense of analysis associated with it and the simulation capability that can be derived from it. So congratulations.
Thank you, Pete. One last question?
One last question. A short one, too.
It's okay. We stop.
I understand that the analysis and indeed the proposal for a solution is very specific, and it deals with one aspect of a much larger problem, and perhaps a consideration of the multitude of not only models but means of controlling water in a circumstance like La Habana is worthwhile for the presentation. What I mean by that is that there is zoning legislation that has to be incorporated, I think, to a wider idea of preventing this type of disaster. Also, dikes and other retention types of of systems or other retention systems. If you look at, for instance, a country like Holland, they have a multitude of means of addressing this type of problem that we are very likely that we will very likely face in the coming years.
Thank you. Thank you to the UM team for presenting. Up next, we have the UF